I walk alone without my love and think about what if I look.
Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with singer-songwriter Steven Blane. He talked to us about his 2019 CD, I Walk Alone. It's an album comprised of 60s rock and roll, jazz, story songs, and is recommended if you like Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, and Tom Waits. He has 7 other official releases, and as a young boy in Jersey City, his grandma stood him on a table at a talent show singing Delilah, Tom Jones style, in front of a supportive audience that left a profound influence on Steven. Since then, he has been often on his own. He writes and performs in multiple genres like Americana, pop, jazz, and country. Please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Hey, thanks for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz today. I really appreciate it.
Sure.
So let's talk about your latest release, I Walk Alone. Talk to me a little bit about what the artistic vision for this project was.
Well, you know, this is I believe it's either my 6th or my 7th. If you count a religious album that I released, I think it's 7. But the bottom line is that what I'm discovering about myself is that first of all, I'm writing constantly, and then when I get to a place where I think I have enough songs, I'll look at the songs and I'll curate them, and I'll say, you know, I want to record these, and then I try and find a story, a flow from one song to the next that validates you know, an album. And what I discovered with that last batch for I Walk Alone was that a number of the tunes were really retro 60s kind of stuff, but I also like jazz progressions, and I love solos that are beyond rock, you know. So, which, you know, incorporating kind of little jazz, you know, flat ninths and things like that. That sort of came together in this album. A number of the tunes are really straight ahead, 1967 retro rock and roll. But then there's a couple that are really kind of there's a beautiful jazz ballad on here that I just think is incredible, and it's literally called Incredible, you know. So that's the genesis of this album. Is it really? It's an organic process for me. I'm always writing. I like to do 2 albums a year. In fact, I've curated enough songs. I'm probably going to work on the next set of tunes shortly, and then then curate among those recordings what my next album will be. Because for me, that's what keeps me going. It keeps me growing, even more importantly, because my writing gets better. I understand what's just good, and what's you know, being able to self-edit is really challenging, to be able to decide what is, yeah, that's okay, but what makes it worth being recorded, or even more, what makes it worth being released so that people will listen to it, and that for me is another process. So as I move through my musical, you know, through my art over these years, I just find that I'm able to discern quality, you know, more and more, and that's really the origin of the album that we're talking about, of I Walk Alone.
You know, you've kind of delved into it a little bit, but with each successive release, what are you trying to do? Are you trying to evolve? Are you trying to do a stamp in time? How do you see your art progressing as you keep going on?
I'm totally trying to evolve. You know, I've been, this past year, I've been blessed. I've kind of bumped up just an inch. I'm playing regularly, once or twice a week, at clubs here in town. I've got a kind of a steady thing in the Village on Bleecker Street, and I've got a thing in Harlem, where you know, many of the patrons are people of color, and there's a lot of R&B going on there, and hip hop. And in the middle of all that, they bring in singer-songwriters, you know, white bread kids and me to do sets. You know, they nurture music. It doesn't really exist. Honestly, I've never found a place like this where styles can be mixed, and patrons will be in there. Listen, even if it's only 5 people or 10 people, if you get an early set, they're actually there. They're eating, but they'll look up. They're listening. They'll applaud. You've got a sound guy there. It gives you professional sound, you know. And so what I'm discovering is that in each, well, certainly the place in Harlem, I'm just absorbing all that stuff. I love it. I want to write, you know, jazzy Americana hip hop tunes now, you know, and that's sometimes, and that seeps into my writing. It seeps into, you know, lyrically when I'll create something, it might be that, you know, usually a melody comes with it, but when I'll put it down, I'll be left with the lyric and I won't remember the melody, although I've recorded it. And then I'll look at it again, and maybe I've just come home from the gig, and I'll be feeling that groove, you know, that R&B groove, and I'll be wanting to throw that in there, and I'll mess around with that, and eventually something that touches on that style will evolve into my material. So I'm constantly excited by being able to hear stuff, and because you know the truth is, you know, here's the honest truth. Musicians don't, you know, people, you can't go out to a club every night, right? I mean, let's be honest. No one's got that kind of life that you can go out and you can drink till 2 a.m. Even jazz cats, they'll just die. You can't. You get a gig once or twice a week. You're out till 2 or 3, maybe, but then you got to catch up. It screws up your whole next day. Where can you listen to live people? Well, you can go online, right, and listen to stuff, but that's not like seeing and hearing somebody do it. There's a big difference between Spotify, which you know is a big problem for me these days, but big difference between that and seeing, you know, a 23-year-old woman or 25-year-old kid, guy, or an older person do material and watching them and see what their evolution is, you know, and what I'm finding is that I feel really strong. I'm very strong right now, but I just it's a slow go, man. I have to tell you, it's slogging through and pushing. I spend all my time trying to promote and market. And I'll tell you right now, there are these festivals all around the planet, and I'm going to tell you that all of these festivals, almost without exception, discriminate against people who are older. I'm sorry, but it's true. They want to hire 24-year-old kids who they don't even have to have a following. That's all bullshit. These are kids that they look good, they sound okay, and they appeal to, you know, I guess what they envision are their audience, who are other 25 and 26-year-old kids. People that get older, I'm really discovering that there is no opportunity. I can't get chosen to do these little festivals. Folk Alliance never looked at me. The little regional festivals never look at me. I haven't. I've done 150 applications for everything around the world, and I can't get anything. Except here's the thing: I'm playing in New York constantly, you know, which is very funny, you know. And it's not because, it's a favor or anything. I'm good enough that these venue people, well, you know, they'll give me the slot, even though they're deluged with emails from people all around the country. I know it. You know it. We all know it. To play a crappy slot. So there's a lot of barriers that I have discovered while trying to advance my art. And I get discouraged, but things, interviews with you, gigs with where people listen to me and come over to me and say, "Wow, that was really good." Or when I'll do a tune, or even if original tune, sometimes I'll throw in a cover. It's funny. The other night I did a cover of Heartbreak Hotel, and I invited this kid to sit in with me who played the flute, and then I listened to the cover. It was really it was impressive. I know how to perform, and kids, most kids that I see really haven't learned how to perform. They can sing, they can play, but they don't know how to really deliver material. And they're not. And here's the other thing: they're not open to receiving counsel or advice about how to do that.
Wow.
They don't want to hear it. They don't want to know it. I mean, it's a strange world, my friend.
It is. So it absolutely is.
So that really brings me back to the first point that I made, is that this particular venue in Harlem, Shrine, and they have another one called Silvana. These don't exist anywhere in New York. These places, and I am able, to play there, like I said, maybe once a week, once or twice a week, even sometimes. And I have just, it's really upped my game, because you need to be able to perform in front of people on a regular basis. Not once every 2 months at Rockwood Music Hall, where you've got to bring 23 people in, and if not, nobody listens to you anyway. That doesn't do your career any good at all.
So let me get to the beginnings of your life in Jersey City. Talk to me about how you fell in love with music and even jazz.
Well, the music thing was ever since I was a kid. I guess somehow along the line when I was a kid, I discovered I could sing, and that that ultimately led to picking up a guitar. Then by the time you're 15 or 16, and then girls and guitar, and wow, 1 and 1 equals 2. And all of a sudden, there's a little popularity there that inspired me to continue with music. And subsequently, being able to sing led to my wanting to go to college and study music. So I applied to college, and I got in, and I got a major in voice. And that was it. That my life was charted. I was a singer. I studied voice. I could play guitar. And then I got into a Broadway show, and then I was writing music, and then all of a sudden, I would say it was only about 7 or 8 years ago that I really started to appreciate jazz. It's late in life that I came to jazz, there's a couple clubs in town that I became enamored with, Smalls and Mesro. I'm sure you're aware of them here in town. Sure. And I started going there, and there was a singer there who was offering a vocal workshop in jazz. And his name is Marion Cowings, who's also an amazing artist. And then I studied with him for a couple years, and he was great, because he would say, when you got up there to sing, he'd say, wait a minute, why are you moving around? You look like an idiot. It was, and that's the way he would address the students, frankly. And he might even say idiot, frankly, but that was valuable, because you know what? When you finally understood that, comments such as when Tony Bennett sings up there, or Frank Sinatra, they come to you from a position of strength that when they're performing, they hardly move. Their energy is focused and centered. And when they're singing, they're not closing their eyes and looking up and imagine, and screaming. And, there's an inner strength that comes from stillness. And that lesson in itself is huge. Kids don't know that. People don't understand that you can't move around, and you really shouldn't close. And there's a whole other way to perform. That there's an elegance to your presentation, and I began to learn that. So now where I come from is a position of strength. When I present and I play my guitar, I sort of feel there's a couple of moves that I can add that elevate solos. I know how to phrase. I know how to sing through not having a voice. I know how to do the job, and that's I'm 62 years old. I'm just as good as I can ever be right now. I hope to get better and better. But it takes the right people in the right places at the right times to really learn the craft, and then you need the opportunity to perform. So all of these things are kind of aligning, but I need to get to the next place, because my desire, my greatest desire, is just to, yes, I guess like any artist, to be acknowledged as having a certain level of ability in my craft, and to be appreciated for my craft. That's it. Like anyone else.
Right on. Absolutely. So let me ask you this. You've talked about youth, and you've talked about a lot of things related to that. My question to you is this. If you were in a dream and you ran into yourself when you were starting out, like, in your 20s, what advice would you give yourself now?
It's tough because you have to understand that the things that were available to me in my dream, I could not have imagined what tools I would have back. You know what I mean? I mean, the ability to, the things that you can do now. I mean, the comment that I just made about being able to sing even when I have no voice, that just was not an option, 40 years ago or 35 years ago. You had to push, you had to sing. The mic sucked, the sound systems weren't as good, everything. Today you can whisper through a gig. You can control everything. There's so many more options today than there were then. I think the greatest wisdom that I'd want to say to myself is dig deeper, get out and perform more, and be open to learning. I think that a danger for everyone is they think when they get out at a college or whatever and they're starting to perform that they're done. This is it. Oh, I'm great. I could, wow. But you know what? You are nothing. There is a lot to learn, my friends. The biggest mistake, what I would want to counsel myself is, hey man, stay the course, stay focused, keep writing, keep learning. But what happens, is that in order to be able to do that at an early age, the dilemma is making a living. And that's actually what impeded me then. It wasn't, shouldn't say impeded, just became a life choice that I wanted to make a living. I wanted to be in relationship. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to have a home. I wanted to do all those things. And that is 5 times or 10 times or 100 times as hard if you're really struggling as an artist. So at least it was for me back then. So now it's a different thing for me. Now I'm not a wealthy guy by any means, but now my kids are grown, and my wife is, and we're happy, and we're good, and now I can really invest 100% of myself, almost 100%, in my craft, and that's what's so magical. So again, the best counsel I would give to someone coming up is stop thinking you know so much. You know nothing. You know nothing.
Yeah.
Be humble. Learn.
Absolutely. What was one of the first, and more specifically for our terms here at the show, what was one of the first jazz shows that you ever saw live that blew your doors down?
Well, I'm not great with with names, okay, but I'm going to tell you that starting to go to Smalls before Mesro was open, it was just mind blowing to me because I used to work with a musician. I had a business partner who was a great jazz musician who worked with Jerry Mulligan, and his name is Rich DeRosa. He's a jazz drummer. He just did some charts for Wynton Marsalis. I mean, he's still kicking it. He's amazing. But on my own, after our business relationship ended, and then when I started again, like I'm saying, about 7 years ago, and I discovered Smalls and I discovered Marion Cowings, who was doing these vocal clinics there, I started going to Smalls. And I can't give you names of who was there, but I would go to so many shows. And listening to these people play, I just found so much came together for me. The way that the musicians exchanged solos, the way that they traded fours, the improvisational techniques that the horn player, pianists always blow me away. I mean, pianists, there's such a great elegance for so many pianists. And then I began to understand how some musicians just seem more adept, even though they're all amazing. Some really spoke to me from a different place. There was something about the combination of notes. There was something about not just blowing a bunch of notes. The way that they placed the notes, the allowing spaces to open up, that became really instructional to me. I understood that there were some of these musicians that were coming through, and there's all kinds of wonderful, amazing people. This is one guy jumps out at me, Ken Poplowski, I think. He's I mean, he's so elegant, and he's just so good, you know.
Yeah.
And I would just sit there in the back and listen to him, and I'd be learning, actually, because you don't have. It doesn't have to be your instrument to learn about music. You know, you can learn from anybody who's great. So again, without giving you any name, except him, I mean, there are many others, I'm sure, but it was really more of being connected to a place that I could go to frequently and listen to all kinds of artists coming through and be in that physical space. That was very, very instructional to me and inspiring.
So let's kind of leap into kind of a general question. You clearly are in the jazz craft. You clearly enjoy it. Tell me, why do you love jazz?
Because it to me at least, it's very creative. It's hyper creative. You know, when we write, you write a song, you know, a formula song, an AABA song, which, you know, pretty much every tune ever written, you know, any standard, it's in that bag. And then and the harmonic progressions. Look, there's all kinds of variations, but the truth is everything is 1-4-5. I mean, you know, CFG or variations thereof. What jazz does is it allows the mind to wander in a very structured way, in a way that, you know, you're always thinking about the chord progression, but you're thinking about how can I interpret, what can I bring to that progression? What can I add? And you know, frankly, I do that vocally. You know, I've taken all that. If you listen to any of my vocal performances, even though it's a retro 60s thing or it's a country thing, you know, because I love to write kind of country ballads. But when I perform them, when I sing them, I'm adding, you know, flats and ninths, and I'm adding the little jazz things that I've learned, because my voice is my primary instrument. I can't really express myself melodically on the guitar or the piano because I'm just not as skillful as jazz instrumentalists. But vocally, I'm damn good, and that's where I apply. I just find it elevating. I find jazz elevating, and it just inspires me. It makes me smile.
So let's get a little fantastical here and say that, like, the Jazz DeLorean pulls up in front of your house. You can go see any jazz musician at any point in history. Where are you going? Who are you going to see?
Well, I hope people don't get mad at me. But I'm going to be really honest. I'd want to see Sinatra in the 50s, because you know, again, I'm a vocalist. I would want to see Sinatra. I mean, honestly, there's just nobody that comes to mind that's better. Maybe an equal would be Bennett. You know, not even that long ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, Bennett was still still right on. I haven't heard in the past couple of years, but, you know, it's getting on in years. But those two vocalists, and you know, I'm not including Ella because I'm a male vocalist, so naturally my ear goes towards the guys, and I just think they're so brilliant. They're so brilliant, and so much to learn from them. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm not going to come up with an instrumentalist for you, but that's my ear always goes to the vocal guy.
No, that's
vocal guy.
No, that's good. That's good. That's right on. So let me ask you this. Everyone has their version or their interpretation of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your fans, colleagues, but you know who you are best. Tell me, who do you think you are?
I'm a writer. I'm a songwriter. I always have been. You know, every night when I sit down with a glass of wine, and it's quiet, and a couple glasses of wine, and I've got a concept that I'm working on. It's hypnotic, and then I'll start a lyric or start a concept, and it just, for me, it's magic. And all of a sudden it'll be 2 hours later, and I've got a song, and I think it's good. And then I'll go to bed, and then wait. First thing in the morning, I'll pick up my phone because it's in notes or whatever, and I'll look at it and say, "Geez, I missed. It's not quite right, So I'll go into the editing stage, and it'll take me, then the rest of the day, and I'll either get it, I'll either focus it, and I'll make it work, or I won't. And I'm not like Leonard Cohen and going crazy and about the nuance of. I'm beating myself up for months about getting a song. If it doesn't work after a few days, I'll just move on, because I can't, because sometimes things just don't work. Concepts, I reach for concepts that I envision are interesting, and I try to develop them, but sometimes they just don't work. And that's the way it is. But I think that if you were a novelist or you were any kind of a writer, that it would be a similar process. That you would focus on something, a character or whatever, and if that character, maybe that character couldn't achieve what it just doesn't work. It didn't work in relationship with the other character or whatever. So I really feel like a writer. I am a writer.
That's perfect. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Steven, thank you for taking time out to talk to Neon Jazz. Good luck with the album and the live work. Hopefully we'll see you here in Kansas City.
Thanks so much. It's a real pleasure, and best of luck to you.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Steven for his time, music, and stories. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Without you.
Neon Jazz.